Welcome everyone. Today I'm gonna discuss about economic systems. What is market? A market any situation that brings together buyers and seller of goods and services. Type of economics. In the modern world today, there is a range of economic system. Market economy, an economy where economic decisions are decentralized, resources are allowed by private individuals, and business supply goods and services based on demand. Economic system. Type of economic system. If we focus on the type of economic system in the modern world today, there is a range of economic system. Competitive markets, a market in which there is a large number of buyers and the sellers so that no one can control the market price. Free economy, a market is which the government does not intervene in any way. Planned economy, an economic where economic decisions are passed down from government authority and where resources are owned by the government. Resource and business are owned by the government. Government decisions what goods and services will be produced and what price will be charged for them. Government decision what methods of productions will be used and how much work will be paid. Economic system distinctions. Primary distinction. The primary distinction between a free and command economy is the degree to which the government determines what can be produced and what price will be charged. Real world. Most economy in the real world are mixed. They combine elements of the command and the market system. Demand for goods and services. Demand, the relationship between the price of a certain goods or services and the quality that the goods or service someone is willing and able to buy. Price, what a buyers pay for a unit of the specific good or service. Quality demands, the total number of unit of a goods or services consumers wish to purchase at a given price. Law of demand, the common relationship that a higher price lead to a lower quantity demanded of a certain good or services and a lower price led to a higher quantity demand while all other variables are held constant. Demand schedule, a table that shows the quantity demand for a certain goods or services at a range of price. Example, price is measured in dollar per gallons of gasolines. The quantity damaged in measures in millions of gallons over some times period and over some geographic area. Demand schedule example, $1, 800, $1.2, 700, $1.4, 600. It's a quantity of demand. 1.8, 500 millions of gallons. If it's 2, 460 to 2.2, 420. What is a demand curve? Demand curve, a graphic representation of the relationship between price and quantity demand of a certain good or services, which price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal axis. For example, the figures to the left with price per gallon on the vertical axis and the quantity of the horizontal axis. The demand schedule shows that as price rise, quantity demand decreases and the vice versa. The downward slope of the demand curve illustrates the law of demand, the investment relationship between price and quantity demand. What is assumed in a demand curve? Center paribus. A Latin phrase means other things being equal. Any given demand of or supply curve is based on the uh, criteria paribus assumptions that all else in held equal. When changing one variables in a functions, demand for some products was assumed everything else in held constant. A demand curve or a supply curve is a relationship between two or only two variables when all other variables are held equal. If all else is not held equal, then the law of supply and demand will not necessarily held. What affect a demand curve? Demand curve affected by willing to purchase suggests a desire to buy, and it depends on what economics call tested and preference. If you either need or nor want something, you wanted be willing to buy it. Ability to purchase suggests that income is important. Professions are usually able to afford better housing and transportation than students because they have more income. Demand curve affected by price of related goods can also affect a demand. If you need a new car, the price of a Honda may affect your demand for a Ford. Size or competitive of the populations. The more children a family has, the greater their demand for clothing. The more driving a children a family has, the greater their demand for car insurance, and the less for D appears and the baby formula. Income example with automobile. Initial demand for the automobiles at point Q, if the price of $20,000 per car, the equations of the car demand is $18 million. Also shows how the quantity of car demand would change as a result of a higher or lower price. For example, if the price of a car rose $22,000, the quantity demanded would be decreased to 17 million at a point R. Income example with automobiles. Assume the economic expert and increase many people's income, making cars more affordable. With cars is still $20,000, but which higher income, the quantity demand increased to $20 million show at points. As a result of the higher incomes level, the demand curve shift to the right to the new demand curve, indicating an increased demand. Factor affecting demand. Shift in demand happens when a change is some economic factors cases a different quantity to be demanded at every price. Changing taste of preference, changing the compositions of the populations, changes the price of the related goods, change in expectations about futures. Factor affecting demand and growth. There are many factors around the world that will affect demands and goods, and by this way we are actually facing different kind of challenge, different kind of things, different kind of motives and other things. For that particular points, goods or service terms, the demand for a product can be affected by the changes in the price of related goods, such as substitute or complements. Substitute goods or service that can be used in the place of one another. Complements goods or services that are used together because the use of one enhanced the use of other. Inferior goods, good or service whose demand decrease when a consumer income increase and the demand income increase when income decrease. Normal goods, good or services whose demand increase when a consumer income increase and demand decrease when the consumer income decrease. Factor shifting demand curve. 6 factors that can shift demand curve are summarized in the chart above. The directions of the arrow indicate whether the demand curve shift represent an increase in demand or a decentralize of the demands. So there are many things actually in COVID-19 situations actually decreasing. Supply of goods or services. Supply, the relationship between price of a certain good or service and the quantity of that goods or good or services producer willing to offer for sale. Law of supply, the common relationship that a higher price lead to a higher quantity supply of a certain good or services, a lower price lead to a higher quantity supply, while all other variables are the held constant. Quantity suppliers, the total number of units of a goods or services produced are willing to supply at a given price. What is supply? Is supply the same as quantity supply? Supply is not as the same as quantity supply. Supply refers to the curve and the quantity supply refers to the point on the curve. What is supply schedules or schedule? A table that shows the quantity demand for a certain goods or services at a range of price. Supply graph, a graphic representations of the relationship between price and quantity supplied of a certain good or service, which price of the vertical axis and quantity of the horizontal axis. Production cost affects supply. If other factor relevant to the supply do change, then the entire supply curve will shift. A shift in supply means a change in the quantity supply at every stage. Production cost affects supply. If a farm faces lower cost of production, while the price for the good or services the farm produce remain unchanged, a farm profit go up. When a farm profit increase, it's more motivated to produce outfit, since the more it produce, the more profit it will earn. When the cost of production fall, a farm will tend to supply a large quantity at any given price for its output. That can be shown by the supply curve shifting to the right. Shifting in supply due increase production cost. If a farm faces higher cost of production, then it will earn lower profit at any given selling price for its product. As a result, a higher cost of production typing causes a farm to supply a smaller quantity at any given price. In this case, the supply curve shift to the left. Supply factor also affected by subsidies. Subsidy, a government payment to farm to encourage productions of some good or services. A farm representative is reducing the cost of productions. Demand and supply. Graphic for demand and supply curve both have price of the variable axis and quantity of horizontal axis. The demand curve and the supply curve for a particular good or services can appear on the same graph. Together, demand and supply, demand for the price and quantity that will be bought and the sold in a markets. What does it mean? When the quantity demand and the quantity supply are not the same. Surplus or excess supply. Surplus situation where the quantity damage in a market is less than the quantity supply occurs at a price above the equilibrium. Equilibrium price and quantity combination where supply equals demands. Shortage situation where the quantity demand in a market is greater than the quantity supply occurs at price below the equilibrium. Generally, any time the price of a good is below the quantity equilibrium level, incentives built into the structure of a demand and supply will create pressure for the price to rise. Similarly, anytime the price for a good is above the equilibrium level, similar pressure will generally cause the price to fall. Equilibrium where supply and demand intersects. Equilibrium is the price and quantity combinations where supply equals demands. Equilibrium price, the price where the quantity supply in a market equals the quantity demands. Equilibrium quantity, the quantity both supplies and demands at the equilibrium price. Equilibrium and economic effect. Equilibrium is important to create both a balanced markets and effective markets. Efficiency, when the optimal amounts of goods are produced and consumer minimize waste. Efficiency is the demand and supply model has the same basic meaning. The economy is getting as much benefit as possible from the scarce resources, and all the possible gain from the trade have been achieved. Finding equilibrium using the four-step process. Step 1, draw demand and supply curve showing the market before the economic change took place. Step 2, deciding whether the economic change being analyzed affect demand or supply. Step 3, determine whether the effect on demand or supply caused the curve to shift to the right or to the left, and sketch the new demand of supply curve of the diagram. Step 4, identify new equilibrium and then compare the original equilibrium's price and quantity to the new equilibrium price and quantity. Use the 4 steps for the find the equilibrium point. Step 1, draw a demand and supply model to illustrate what the market for US postal services look like before the scenario starts, and the demand curve D and the supply curve S shows the original relationship. Step 2, will a pay rise for the postal worker affect supply or demands? Step 3, is the effect on supply positive or negative? Compare the new equilibrium price and quantity to the original equilibrium price. Understanding how supply and demand shift a graph. Demand equals to the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded of the certain good or services. Quantity demand, the total number of the of unit of a good or services consumer are willing to purchase at a given price. Quantity supply, the total number of quantity of a good or service produced are willing to sell at a given price. Understand how supply demand shift in a graph. Shift in demand, when a change is some economic factor cause a different equations to be demanded at every price. Shift in supply, when a change is some effective factor caused as different quantity to be supplied at every price. Supply, the relationship between price and the quantity supply of a certain good or services. So here is the quick review what we learned today. What are the characteristics of the market economy? Included free and competitive markets. What are the characteristics of a planned or command economy? What is the demand and the law of demand? What is a demand curve? How can you create a demand curve using a data set? What factor cause a shift in the demand curve and explain why the shift caused? What are the substitutes and complements and give example? How do you draw a demand curve and graphically representation change in the demand? What is supply and the law of supply? What is supply curve? So these are the many interesting factors we learned today, and if we can focus on the demand and supply curve in an effective way, that time we can move in a professional's way and we can do these things in an effective way. At present condition, specifically in the COVID-19 situation, we have to understand the market demand as well as the market market supply. If we can understand this curve of market demand and supply, that time we play a major role for our organizations. So I request everyone, please try to understand the macroeconomics in an effective way and try to implement this macroeconomics. Thank you, everyone.